Alright guys, let's get into a mullet mohawk, a mullhawk if you will. So we've been working on growing out his mullet for some time now, but he decided he wanted to bring the fade up higher. So first I sectioned out the fade areas really carefully, and I used my mirror to make sure both sides were the same. I love using these patches to make sure I don't accidentally bring the clippers up too high. I've been taking progress videos of his mullet along the way as we grow it out, and he's prepping for a bodybuilding competition in June, so by then it's going to be glorious. So by then I'll be posting a video from beginning to end showing all the stages of growing out his mullet. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to make sure you see it. So I'm removing the bulk with my number 2 guard, making sure not to push the clippers into the round of his head. Basically I want to create like a flat plane moving out from his temple. So wherever his head starts to curve, I'm just letting the clippers hover above that. And I'm using my comb to comb the weight into the clippers to create that weight line. And you'll see that we'll clean that up a little bit later, so we're just going to go on to the other side. This is mostly just to get the weight out of the way and start building our shape, but we're going to come back over and refine it once we get the fade done. But he wanted to bring the fade a lot higher this time than we normally go, so I'm making the bald line from the top of the ear to the corner of the hairline right by the temple. That's going to make it super high up towards the front, but also bringing it down a little bit towards the back, so connecting to the back of the haircut is a little easier. Now I'm going to start with my clippers, no guard open. I'm going to make my section and then slowly close my lever as I'm fading down. And I like to imagine mini sections within my section. So if I'm going over the spot 3/4 up the section, then the clippers I'd open about 3/4 of the way. And I take the bald line out as soon as I'm done. A lot of people say you gotta save it for last so that you still have a guideline, but you can see that I made a line just above it. So now I can just work off of that instead. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that and you wanna leave that bald line until you're done with the rest of the fade, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just don't necessarily think it's mandatory. So now I'm going to the opposite side so I can make the no guard section the same size as the other side of the head. Then I'm obviously going to fade it out the same way, and then I will just fade out the rest of this side of the head since there's only going to be one other section that I'm going to make. Next, I'm coming in with my 1 guard open. Same with the number 2 guard, I'm not going to follow the curve of the head. Instead, I'm going to hover it off as I go up, keeping an eye on where I left off with the number 2 so I can try to connect it. And then I'll fade down the section the same way I did with the no guard section. A lot of times I can connect the 1 to the 2 without having to use the 1.5 guard, but you'll see on this haircut that that wasn't the case, and I had to go and touch up in between with the 1.5. Now there's a little bit of darkness in between the no guard section and the 1, so I'm coming in with the half guard, and I start with it about halfway open, and then I go down to all the way closed if needed, and use just the corner of the blade to flick out at the line. And here's the 1.5 guard. I do the same thing and start with it about halfway open. You can start with it all the way open to be safe if you want, but I know my tools and how they're set up, and if I start with it all the way open, it's not going to do what I need it to. So I always just save a few seconds of time and go straight to halfway open. There's a spot back here that I went over with the 1.5 guard that was still a little bit darker. So I just opened up my 1 guard all the way and used the very corner to go in. And I slowly closed it and went over with the corner until the dark spot was gone. And now I'm using thinning shear over comb to just barely hit the tip of the hairs on the weight line, just to break it up enough to blend it in a little bit better. And here's all that stuff on the other side from a slightly different angle. This is the number 1 again. And now the 1.5. Now when you look straight ahead, you can see that the left side is bulkier than the other. So I'm going to do some scissor over comb to carefully correct that and make the shape nice and even. And then thinning shear over comb to break up the blunt line that we made. I realized there was a little line here, so I busted out the 1/2 guard to blend that out. Again, starting halfway open and slowly closing until it's blended out. And I'm really happy with how that's looking so far, so we'll move on. Now with outlining the back, the goal here is not to make super sharp lines on the bottom because this hair is going to be hanging down anyway, so I literally just want to get the neck hairs that are a different texture than the rest of the hair. Definitely use your comb or something to get the rest of the hairs out of the way to make sure you don't accidentally cut them. Whenever my client is getting a shampoo, I like to do that before I shave the back of his neck. It's just more sanitary that way. By the way, this Statement shampoo that I'm using is amazing. It's the best smelling shampoo I've used ever. Now this is a first. We're using conditioner on his hair. Normally his hair is way too short to even need it, but he has really coarse hair that's kind of curly, so conditioning is definitely important at this length. Again, his hair is coarse, so I'm going to be using a lot of shave gel while shaving the back of his neck. I want to make sure I'm not shaving over any spots too dry because I don't want to irritate his skin. Some clients just prefer the shavers or the trimmers. It just depends on their skin. They know their skin, so if you ask what they prefer on the back of their neck, they should be able to tell you. If you start to knock one of the patches off, just reset it. Don't risk having some hairs come down and accidentally cutting them. All right, now we're going to be styling everything back, but we want a lot of volume, so I'm blow drying everything forward first. Before doing this, I sprayed some Statement grooming spray, also smells amazing. But we just want to get everything mostly dry and blow dried forward, so that way when we blow dry it back, there's going to be extra volume. This includes the back. We're going to blow dry it straight up against the grain, and it's going to look silly and ridiculous at first, but that's all right. That kind of makes it more fun for me anyway. So now that we're done, we're going to blow dry it all back, and I'm going to start at the bottom because that's going to be kind of easier. And we're just going to work our way forward until we get to the fringe. And don't be afraid to keep blow drying over hair that's already dry. That's what helps you style it and make it moldable. If you stop blow drying it as soon as it's dry, then all you did was dry it. You didn't really style it. I'll use this spot to say that my buddy Josh here is a really awesome competitive bodybuilder. I'll link his Instagram and his TikTok in the description to this video. As you can see, we're getting a ton of volume, which is what we wanted. But when we add some product to it, it's gonna smooth it out and calm it down just a little bit. We're going to pause here to trim his mustache. My client always rocks a chevron mustache for his competitions. It's perfect because it's a little bit different, but he's a firefighter and it also will fit in the mask and everything, which is super important, obviously. What makes it a chevron stash is this top line and the fact that it gets thinner towards the corner of the mouth. You can never be too careful with stuff like this. Your clients will appreciate you taking the extra time to make sure you don't mess up. So to style the hair, we're going to use Statement Fiber Pomade. Also smells amazing. This company really just has their smells down. Everything smells so good. But I started off with using this much. We went with a fiber pomade because he wanted a little bit of shine, but not too much. So blow drying and getting his hair dry first and then using a shiny product will give it a little bit of shine, but still not take away from the volume and everything. I like to get the product all the way through my hands and between my fingers and everything before applying. And then I slowly start working it into the back of the hair first. Doing that, and along with making sure I have a thin, even layer over my hands, is going to make sure that I don't smear too much product in any one area. And I try to apply it to the front last so there's less product in my hands, so there isn't enough to weigh it down and take away from the volume. I did end up scooping a little bit more product to finish it off because it just wasn't enough. Remember, it's always easier to add more than it is to take it out of the hair. And now I'm just pulling it in different directions to see how it lays and see how I like it best. Now that I know most of the product is out of my hands, I can apply a little more pressure towards the front to make sure there's no stray hairs sticking out. And I want to make sure we have a distinct part on both sides, so I use the small side of my comb to make the weight line nice and neat. And then I'm going through the top with my wide tooth pompadour comb to get some separation and some cool texture. Now I'm showing him how much the back has grown. We used to do a super high razor skin fade, so it's definitely been growing out for a while. And you can tell the mullet is really coming together. If you don't like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications and all that stuff, Josh is gonna beat you up for me. Just kidding, but you should still do that stuff. And I guess I'll get out of your hair now.